Part 2, let's get into it. 12 benefits. We talked last time. If you haven't watched the video already, then go ahead and watch it. We talked about 6 benefits related to your mind and how you're going to operate. Now, the 6 benefits are going to pertain to who you're going to become. And the goal with this video is to create that intrinsic motivation to quit the porn, the masturbation, the casual sex, and do semen retention permanently. Now, of course, if you get married or if you're married, then you might take a different decision, a different approach. But at least I want to give you the real benefits, the simple benefits that you're going to experience and that are going to literally change your life if applied correctly. So, number 7, shame cycle. The shame cycle breaks. When you're stuck in a cycle of, I feel bad, therefore I'm going to watch porn, then I feel worse because I watch porn, therefore I watch porn again, you start feeling hopeless. And to feel hopeless, there's a huge problem with that. Because what happens is your perception of life completely changes. You can't really see a way out, even though objectively, physically, in the real world, there is definitely a way out. There is not just a way out, but you can literally take your current situation and do a complete 180 and use it to your advantage. But when we feel hopeless, it's very hard to see these things in the first place. And on the flip side, when you have hope, everything changes. They even did a study on this. If you read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, I might be butchering the name and I'm sorry if that's the case, but if you read her book, she mentions that study where they looked at SAT. SAT essentially is a test that you take before the school year begins, and that test essentially will represent the kind of grades you probably are going to get for that year. And they compared people that had a fixed mindset compared to those that had a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is when you fail at an exam and then you think, well, this sucks, I cannot really do anything about that. A growth mindset is, I failed the exam, let me take that as an opportunity to double down on the effort and on the studying for the next exam. Therefore, I know I'm going to have a better grade next time. So what they saw is ended up doing worse in the school year compared to those that had a bad grade on the SAT but had a growth mindset. And a growth mindset can be defined as hope. It's this belief that it's not because I failed that I'm going to fail again. The actions you're going to take are going to be completely different. I'm not just saying a bit differently. There's going to be a night and day difference between the actions you're going to take when you feel hopeless and the actions you're going to take when you feel hope. And most people feel hopeless when they're stuck in that cycle. And you also get a sense of peace. You know you are aligned with your morals, your values, with what you know is good for you. There's not that cognitive dissonance anymore of I'm doing something that contradicts my value, or what we call moral incongruence. So you feel better, you feel peace. 8th benefit, self-respect. Because when you say you're going to do something and you end up doing it, it creates that sense of confidence of, oh, if I take these specific actions every single day, that I know that if I am consistent with, I'll probably be successful, or I'll probably make so much progress that I'll be close to success. What happens is you gain enormous momentum, and it's hard to break your promise when you've been keeping your promises. It's like a streak. I see people running and they do like a streak of running every single day, and they get to day 500 sometimes. Do you really think they're going to think, oh, today I feel lazy, I feel like I don't have energy, I'm not going to go run? No, like they want to keep that streak alive. And that's what happens. And that creates self-respect. And to have self-respect gives you that validation to yourself. You do not rely on someone else's approval of you or their attention. And instead, you feel like you're enough in that sense. You feel worthy. You feel respect. And when that happens, counterintuitively, well, people respect you more, people validate you more, and you don't even care, but you get it. And that self-respect has a ripple effect on your life. Imagine you're in your career or in your business, and you talk with clients, or you talk with customers, or you're talking to your team. Of course, you might need their approval on certain things, but you're more willing to go ahead and ask what you want. Because you don't rely on their validation or on if they approve of you or if they reject you in order to feel a sense of respect. Therefore, you might impose yourself more because you don't need them to feel respect. You have the respect. And it might sound cringe, but the reality is this is what actually happens. 9. Self-trust. Going back to self-respect, we essentially talked about a track record. Let's say that for the last 30 days, you've been so consistent. For the last 30 days, you've done everything you said you were going to do. You didn't watch the porn, you didn't masturbate, you took the actions in your career, in your business, in your fitness, whatever is important to you. And a little trick from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, if you just say you're going to do little things that are easy to get done. Let's say read a page of a book every day or do 10 push-ups a day. Yeah, very, very small things. And you start with that. You're going to build the same amount of self-trust. You're going to have that track record. And of course, you're going to probably increase the intensity over time as you get used to it. And man, your life after like 90 days can do a complete 180. Now, the biggest benefit, literally the biggest benefit, in my opinion, of course, there are other benefits here which are objectively more important, but the benefit that is going to completely change your life on a physical level is that your vision becomes real. My life did a complete 180. Going from living in a room just doing the same routine every single day, seeing no results, being a people pleaser, being out of shape, being distant from God, struggling with these habits, binging on junk food, video games. My life was a complete mess. I couldn't even look at people in the eyes. And when a woman was next to me, I would start sweating, thinking, what if she talks to me? What if I mess up? My life was a complete mess. As you start being consistent and you build that vision, of course, this is an extra exercise you can do. This is something which I tell my students to do, and they love doing it, and it also changes their lives. Well, that vision, the dream version of yourself or the future version of yourself and the life he's living and the way that he acts, he thinks, and he feels, well, it starts becoming real. You start becoming that person. You start changing so much that the old version of yourself, indulging bad habits, not being confident, and so on, starts to disappear and you start really becoming that person. The goals that you have, the things you want to achieve, they literally, and I'm not kidding, and I'm not trying to just say this to catch your attention, but they actually start becoming real. Benefit number 10, spiritual sharpness. When you are bored, when you have nothing to do, when you're in your car driving, and especially when you stop thinking about intimacy so much about sex, porn, masturbation, flashbacks about porn, when these thoughts are not really in your mind anymore, they start disappearing. You're going to think about God, you're going to remember God much, much more. And on top of that, because you don't have that shame, and we know when we feel shame, it's really hard to pray. It's really hard. You feel like you're living a double life. And that's one of the worst feelings. But now you know, and of course, it doesn't mean that just because of semen retention, you now are not a sinner. But to get rid of something that's been a part of your life for so long, to do something which you know with full conviction is wrong and that God has forbidden, you get a sense of focus. You don't have these thoughts about being an hypocrite, living a double life. You know that you are on the path. And this is one of the best feelings. Benefit number 11, deeper relationships. Again, you're not living a double life anymore. So when you talk with your family, friends, your community, your kids, you can now be fully present because you don't have these thoughts about, on the outside, I am a man of faith, or I say I am like this and that I'm successful, but in private, it's a different game. It's a different reality. When you subtract these thoughts, you are going to be much more present. It's this sense of, finally, I'm not like this anymore. I can be the role model for these people. And the objectification filter is gone. The over-sexualization, I see this woman, the first thing I think about is how she's going to be in bed. Nasty thoughts. And instead, your mind is more preoccupied with the remembrance of God, with your personal projects, your goals, improving yourself, things that are going to move the needle forward in your life, or things that are objectively important. You're not going to feel so nervous around women because you put them on a pedestal, because you objectify them. The thing, when you constantly are indulging in porn, masturbation, you usually put women on a pedestal. If they're not on a pedestal, then you see them for who they are. And of course, I'm not going to go to an extreme and say that we should feel no type of sexual attraction for the opposite gender. No, you shouldn't go against your nature. But to overly do it and to lust and to do things that God has clearly forbidden, that's what we're staying away from. That's what we try to not put on a pedestal. Lastly, masculinity. I'll say something. A lot of people, because of the society that we're brought up in and the media and the current narrative and the people we look up to at a young age or even right now, just look at the we listen to or just look at the movies like James Bond, where he sleeps with these beautiful women and he's like this masculine role model for everyone. We think in the back of our mind, even if we do not want to admit it, and this is something I work with my clients, we see sleeping with women or at least being validated by women, having women wanting to be with us, whether it be for lustful reasons or just simple validation, as achievements. So we start chasing these things because they're easy to achieve to a certain extent, and we get a sense of accomplishment. We feel like we accomplished something because we slept with that beautiful woman that everyone else wants to be with. Therefore, you're going to become good at only achieving this, or at least mostly this, and all of the time, mental energy, mental space, focus was wasted on these achievements instead of real achievements, instead of helping people around you, giving more to charity, building projects that could change the world, building a business, a career, building a family. These are real achievements, real pursuits that will benefit you right now, in the future, and if you believe in the hereafter. So it's like a safety blanket where you're just feeling like you're achieving things. And of course, we can say the same thing about porn and masturbation, because porn and masturbation, what it is essentially is you are fantasizing, you are visualizing yourself having intimacy with that specific woman in the video. But that's another topic, and I do have other videos on that topic because it's more of an advanced topic. It's above our pay grade today to talk about these things. But also you face discomfort. I mean, you don't have that escape, that coping mechanism. If there is a problem with your wife, you try to find solutions, and humans generally we are very good at finding solutions. And I want to give an example of in the eastern part of Canada, where you have the native tribes that live in the forest, for example. In one of these tribes, it was that you had to go in the forest alone and to survive without anyone. You're just there by yourself. Of course, this probably happens around puberty. So they are literally there, and in Canada there are wild animals, danger, and they had to survive. They had to find a way or to make one. There were no other options. There's no, I want to opt out of this. No, you have to go through it. So guess what happens? There's no escapes. There's no other options. There's no coping mechanism. If you feel fear, you're going to have to feel that fear. If you face a wild animal, you're going to have to find a way out. And in those situations, what happens? The kid either dies or he becomes a man. And in our situation nowadays, we are probably not going to die if we do not have a coping mechanism or a form of escape. The worst thing that could happen is that we'll probably just find a way to adapt to that state, or we might burn out. And in most cases, we're talking about mental problems and not physical problems. So the probabilities that burnout is going to occur are going to be extremely slim. So these are all of the benefits. Now, if you want to learn more about how you can change your life and transform your life through semen retention by quitting porn, masturbation, and lust, you can book a call with me personally, and we'll see how I can help you quit this once and for all. And if I don't think that I can help you, and you also don't think that this is for you, then I'll just point you to the right direction and give you resources so that you can make progress on your own. Anyways, this is Semen, and I'm out. And don't forget to watch the first video right here if you haven't already.